We are back
We're back.
in Casa de James, the fat-burning house, the house in which fat is burnt. Truth. So, Abel, I wanted to share with you and with the viewers, one of the reasons I was so excited to jump on a plane from Seattle, come down to see you, is because I really respect what you and the fat-burning brand and your approach represents, which is you're very focused on results and not necessarily ideology or proving a point, but just the bottom line here is we're trying to be healthy and we're trying to rock our mission and our vision on this planet. And I think one of the key reasons to be excited about the information we're going to present here is that's our motivation. Our motivation is not, you really can't put what you talk about into a box. You can't put what I talk about into a box. And sometimes that's a challenge.
It is. It's a huge
us
challenge. Yeah.
Personally, because it's like, well, Abel, what are you? Jonathan, what are you? But I think it's really exciting to our listeners because they can trust us to bring them real information rather than ideology or dogma.
Yeah, and I think what we see so much of, and what we've seen so much of, and we're starting to get sick of, is that polished up celebrity, like, ding type approach, you know, that like diet book after diet book that's basically just slapping a new name on something that's been talked about for a long time. And what both of us do and what we're really in search of is the truth behind all of this marketing nonsense, which is really, I think, in large part gotten us to where we are.
Exactly.
Which is a horrible place. I think a lot of us would agree from a health and certainly from a medical perspective, and that's been increasingly obvious to a lot of us in the past few years. But why don't we weren't planning on this, but why don't we talk about how we got this information and what our personal story was in finding that. So for myself, one of the reasons I do what I do, the biggest reasons I do what I do, is because I always wanted to be the best, be the healthiest, perform at my best when I was doing athletic events. And I was following advice from magazines, what celebrities tell you to do, and products celebrities endorse. Doctors, well-meaning aunts and uncles and friends, and what I was taught in school, and many books, conventional wisdom as it applies to health and manipulating your body size and health and what have you. And as a direct result of following that advice, I found my health falling apart. I had very typical things that a lot of people have today, which is on the road to being pre-diabetic. I had high blood pressure. My face was very inflamed. It was about, like twice as wide as it is now. I had gut issues. I was putting on lots of weight fairly quickly, and I had thyroid issues. I couldn't sleep at night.
And how old were you at this? I mean,
I was in my early 20s, and this was just like
that's bonkers.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. So I was falling apart, and basically every time I went into the doctor, and I went to a lot of them, he basically just threw pills at me. And he said, eat less, exercise more. And at that point, I had been running 30 plus miles a week, lifting weights, not in the way that I do now, but I was exercising a lot, and I was starving myself, going from diet to diet. And sometimes I would try to eat lots of one thing to see if that would help. And it seemed like nothing was working, and it was kind of hopeless. Yeah. And it took my house burning down, quite literally, for me to get to a moment where I questioned everything, where, my life was spinning out of control. So I knew I needed to focus on what was staring at me in the mirror, which was that my health was falling apart in my early 20s. And I'm like, this is no longer acceptable. And so I took that leap of faith, doing the things that my doctor said would absolutely stop my heart, like eating real butter, having bacon from time to time, not being afraid of red meat, and eating traditional foods that we've been eating for a long time, and then avoiding those diet foods that we've been eating for the past few years. And what that did when I took that leap of faith was incredible. Yeah. Like all of those problems that I mentioned, I thought that they were just a part of getting older. Getting older, that sounds ridiculous when you're in your early 20s, but like that's what most people are accepting today. Absolutely. Is that like as soon as you're not a teenager anymore, you're going to get fatter every year, you're going to get sicker every year, and it's just kind of hopeless. That's what happens. It's your genetics. But what we're here to tell you is that it's not that at all. You've been duped. in a lot of cases into following advice that's either outdated or really coming to you through marketing channels from corporate or government interests, which are a lot of times hand in hand, that are giving you advice that would be in their benefit, not yours. Absolutely. So where I got the information was kind of crazy at the beginning. I got it from my background's in psychological and brain science, and I'm a total nerd like you. And so I was on PubMed and reading medical journals, but also I was on bodybuilding forums and reading like underground bodybuilding textbooks from the 1970s and looking at people who were doing things that seem absolutely impossible. Because, if you look at bodybuilders or athletes as an example, like men can get down to 3% body fat predictably almost every time. Yet we find that most people are unable to lose 10 pounds today.
Yep.
And that's just a function of the advice that they're following.
Absolutely.
So I think one of the things that you and I do is try to get the truth behind all of this information. Yeah. And we don't necessarily care about the channel. We care about the results.
Exactly.
And so that was my journey, and it was shocking. I read every diet book I could possibly read.
Yeah.
I tried every diet. I went to medicine. I talked to friends. I talked to people who knew what they were talking about. Many doctors who are excellent share our same ideology at this point, but it's really about the results, and we're really excited to share those with you. So how did you get the incredible amount of information that's in not only this book, but in your head?
Abel, there's two things you hit on there that I really want to highlight. And one was when you were summarizing the initial place you got your information from, it was basically like a lot of opinions.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people have opinions when it comes to eating and exercise, which, when you think about it, is a little silly. Like, my opinion about how to make an airplane fly is irrelevant.
Right.
Like, there are aerodynamic laws, which, if you adhere to them, the plane will fly, and if you violate them, the plane will crash.
Yeah.
Right? Same with math. There's mathematical laws. We all know what penicillin does to 99% of the population. Human biology and physiology isn't a matter of opinion. And that's a huge transformational point for me was, so I was a personal trainer. That was my background. And I wanted to get bigger. I was a small child, very skinny, very lanky, and that was really impacted a lot of the research in the book. I'll get to that in a second. But so I was trying to get bigger. I was eating a massive amount of calories, doing all the traditional approaches. We talked about 6,000 calories per day. But my clients were not that way. And I bet a lot of our listeners are not that way. Our viewers are not that way, where the struggle is not gaining weight, but the struggle is losing weight. Yeah. So what did I do? I did what we were all taught. I had them eat 1,200 calories per day, 12 to 1,400, exercise for 60 to 90 minutes per day, generally focusing on low-intensity cardiovascular exercise like jogging.
Sounds like good math.
Sounds like good math, right? Yes, except it doesn't work, right? The idea that the earth is flat makes sense, but it's wrong, right? And the idea that eating less and exercising more works makes sense, but it is wrong. And in fact, the statistics are quite clear that it fails 95.4% of the time. And what I experienced was similar to you, both with myself and with my clients, was me ingesting 6,000 calories per day, which was only possible by shooting double shots of olive oil and all kinds of other absurd practices. I didn't get bigger, I did get sicker and sadder. Yeah. And my clients didn't get smaller, but they did get sicker and sadder. And we all ended up feeling like we were wrong.
Yeah.
Right? That there must be something about me. In fact, I went so far as to, I was on the verge of taking anabolic steroids. Wow. Because I was like, there has to be something wrong with me. And I know probably plenty of our viewers have experimented with other pills, powders, or potions that maybe aren't the best approach, because again, it's like, it's me. I'm the problem. And we're here to tell you that is absolutely not the case. The information is the problem. The information you've been given is the problem. And just like we look at the flat earth theory as almost ridiculous today, because once you understand gravity, it makes sense. Yeah. And we look at, for example, the way they used to treat illness was by bleeding people, which kind of makes sense. Like, if you're sick, you don't understand germs and viruses, so you say, oh, your blood must be bad, so let's bleed you. In fact, George Washington died of excessive bloodletting trying to cure his illness. But once you understand the actual science, we're going to give them a whole new model that they can look at these things, and you'll be able to do things with your body, mind, and in the lives of those you love with such less effort and such more predictable results. I love that you mentioned bodybuilding, because the bodybuilding community has known for generations, follow this approach and you will burn fat. Bottom line, you may not be a world-class bodybuilder, but you will burn a lot of fat and you will build a lot of muscle. We can achieve those same predictable results in our everyday lives. And that's what we like to focus on. And that's why I'm so happy to be here with you.
Yeah, me too. And I'd love to just touch upon some of the problems with science. Because people talk about science and it's just like, oh, it's scientifically proven that you should be eating 400 pounds of wheat a day. Right? There's a new study that says that that's exactly what we should do. Like, we're stupid for not not doing that for the majority of our existence. But that's not science. And so much of what we find, even the science that we follow when we're reading the newspaper, in magazines, which tend to be owned by supplement companies, as it turns out. When you look at where your information is coming from, it becomes really interesting. But this science that we're following, in large part, isn't science at all. A lot of these studies, number one, they're not really studies. They're observational. They're not peer reviewed. And these terms, it doesn't really matter if you understand them or not. The main point is that just because someone says something is science doesn't necessarily mean that it is. And so what we're finding is that this science that we've been following in terms of reducing your calories, exercising more, eating lots of whole grains and cheap carbs and processed foods, that science, even though they've been trying to prove that this dietary approach works for decades, we're finding that science, whether it's science or not, does not prove that this works.
Absolutely.
And that is well known and well understood at this point. But if you marry actual science and great science with results, what you said, like bodybuilders do to predictably lose a lot of fat in a short period of time, or build muscle, or do whatever, when you marry those two things together, that's when you get the real power
exactly
in this. Because there is good science out there, and there are good results out there.